Seekers of the Storm just received a massive overall item update, and it actually clears up a lot of the concerns I had about the items. To summarize quickly, many of the items before this update were frankly useless. So niche or bugged as to be unusable, and so unsynergistic it completely clashed with the rest of the game. Suddenly, good builds were less common. Every chest you opened had less of a chance for speed, healing, damage, scaling, crit synergy, missile synergy, AoE, etc. than if you just didn't have the DLC on at all. The DLC just made your runs mathematically worse, and not in a fun or transformative way. So what changed? Well, I'll hand it to Gearbox here. They took the feedback well and they realized all those missteps I just told you about. So we have more speed, more applicable damage, more synergy items, more things that are just fun to play with. In between DLC release and now, Gearbox reached out to me and asked if I wanted to help test and give feedback for these item updates. And I have a lot. And a lot of what you hear me talk about is directly parallel to my own feedback I've given. Personally feel like I did everything I could within my station to try and help make this game fun for everybody, because I love this game. And I probably wrote books worth of feedback by this point, and I'm sure the devs are tired of me. I hope this makes it more clear that Gearbox is trying their best, and why it shows I have a lot of faith in the devs themselves. They're great, they listen to feedback super well, and they're trying. Not only that, I think they've done great, so let's talk about the changes. Starting off with one of my favorite new items, Elusive Antlers. This item beforehand was a knockoff razor wire that couldn't kill anything. Now it's a speed item, and it spawns little wisps around the player to give them an extra speed boost on top of the base speed it gives. I love this item. I think it's fun to play with. I think it's actually very good as well. We needed another speed item in the pool, and I'm glad this one is fun and creative. Side note, your teammates can also pick up the wisps, so it's a good team speed item too. It's awesome actually, A+ change. War Bonds. This went from one of the worst items we've ever seen, just giving a fistful of gold at the start of a stage sometimes, to now on teleporter activation, you're barraging the boss with missiles dealing % of HP damage. What a glow up. This one will definitely change how you route through the stages since it's dependent on gold so much, so I actually think it ticks a lot of synergy boxes for me here. Very cool. Knockback Fin. In a surprising twist, actually ended up being one of my favorite items to play with. Before, it just randomly launched up some enemies in the air and they'd just snipe you from the top rope. But now, not only is it a green item, but it handles a little more like bans with a cooldown. Every 10 seconds you can launch an enemy up from an ability hit, which stuns and gives them a brutal take more damage debuff. You can also juggle the enemy around with consecutive hits. I think it's fun, straight up. It creates a new minigame in the middle of fighting where you gotta focus on the enemy thrown in the air for a quick kill. The debuff and the cooldown to play around are smart. Awesome addition, to be honest. Never thought I'd say that about Knockback Fin, but here we are. Noxious Thorn. This item was so bad, it was impossible to describe well within the time we have for this video. Also, it was bugged and just didn't work half the time, but no one realized it because it was that bad. Another knockoff razor wire item turned into one of the coolest synergy items in the game. Now you gain base % chance to bleed, and on killing enemies, you transfer a portion of all the debuff stacks to enemies around it. Insane. It may not be the best item every run, but on those runs where it's good, there's going to be no better item you're looking for. Thinking about gas, bleed, acrid builds, deathmark builds, etc. Sick. Bolstering Lantern. I hated this item. It was awful to play around with. It used to deal more damage at less than 50% HP, which basically was the anti-watch item. Whatever. Now it has a radius similar to Focus Crystal, where you have more attack speed for more enemies inside the ring. Fun, very powerful actually, and makes you think more about moment-to-moment combat, or micro. Nice item to have now actually. Growth Nectar. Before, this was kind of like a reverse Deathmark. If you had like 5 buffs at once, you'd be more powerful, very vaguely. But now you get the extra benefit for each buff that you have. So before, you'd only ever get it to activate on loops or something. But now if you get it, it's pretty much always going to do something, which really makes the item shine, and you have to think more about your build. I've always loved the idea of paying attention to player buffs, but it was just way too niche and disappointing before. And while this isn't a super exciting item, I think it's really good. Luminous Shot. Changed around a bit from making your primary shot deal a little more damage after a secondary hit to something a little more interesting than the micro. Stores charges so you can let loose a barrage of shots on something important. Also reduces secondary cooldown, which is crazy. I like the concept of this actually. In practice, you're not going to think about it all the time probably, but if you play around it a bit when you need it, I think it's cool. I always said more items similar to bans would be good for this game, and in that, creating more scenarios to think about how you play around combat on timers with stacks is fun and cool actually. So I'm happy here. Warped Echo. Before it just split your damage in half, but you still took full damage? I don't know. But now Echo reduces damage by 30%. It splits it into 3 sources with a 15-second cooldown. This is powerful and an item I kind of want to keep my eye on. Unstable Transmitter, our favorite. Before, it would teleport you somewhere when getting low, almost always finding a way to actually kill you while doing it. Now getting low HP gives you a ton of barrier relative to max HP, and you gain a dimensional aura that bleeds and teleports enemies away. Think of it like you become Pac-Man for a bit. I think anything is better than the previous iteration of this item, and for what it's worth, I think this is a more fun interaction than just being healed at low health or something. Side note, I didn't actually get to test the final iterative version of this item, so it's something I want to pay close attention to in the coming weeks. The next few here are going to be lightning round notes, just mostly visual changes or slight tweaks to stats to make the player understand what the item is doing. Chronic Expansion lowered the gate for damage bonuses, kind of similar to Growth Nectar. Runic Lens now has a very large meteor effect, which makes this god tier item definitely feel the part. Prayer Beads actually tell you what the hell the stats are, and Chancellor will get a nice little sparkle effect. Don't worry, they didn't touch Sailstar. It's perfect as is. So obviously a lot changed here. I'm glad they're open to making large sweeping changes when they need to. Personally, at the initial drop of DLC, I was a little bit more than worried that Gearbox and its parent companies were just going to drop this game. And they could have. But the team here is working overtime to try and fix the mistakes. So personally, the devs, thank you. I appreciate you for listening to me and the others. The work isn't done though. We all know that. There's definitely more to fix. Even though the new items are fun and a lot of the bugs are fixed, you could still argue the game isn't yet in a better state than when Gearbox found it. But if it isn't already, this kind of just gives me the confidence that it can get there. So whatever the future holds, we will see. Long road ahead, but for today, let's appreciate what we got. GG's, and thanks for enduring the complaining. But hey, you know.